100 days of the Lion Diet, week 6. I finally dialed in my food. Before I was all over the place. I was eating ground beef, I was eating this kind of steak, I was eating lamb chops, I was spending money here, not spending money there, but I was all over because I was just trying to survive. But now I've got it dialed in. Picanha, Chuck Roast. That's it. That's what I'm eating. Why? Well, first off, I get beautifully cut picanhas from a local grocery store here in Miami Beach, straight from Argentina, $9.99 a pound. $9.99 a pound for the awesome full picanha. What is the picanha? Well, it's famous, or you'll see it famously at a lot of your Brazilian steakhouses, the Churrascaria. They always call it the house special, the top sirloin. What the picanha is, it is a sirloin, but it's still got the fat cap on top of it. So when you cut it into steaks, every single one of those steaks has great lean muscle meat that you're gonna eat, but also a serious fat cap on the top to give you an amazing amount of flavor. So I'm getting picanhas for $9.99 a pound, and then Chuck Roast at Whole Foods, literally at Whole Foods, not like a Whole Foods store, but the store, Whole Foods, for as little as sometimes $7.99 a pound when they're on sale. So $9.99 a pound, $7.99 a pound, compared to, let's say, your ribeyes that are gonna be at least 20 bucks a pound at Whole Foods. At some of the other small markets, $12, $15, etc. The dry age premium ribeyes at Whole Foods and other markets, I've seen them as high as $35, $40, even 50 bucks a pound if they're YU. And if you wanna talk about like A5 and Kobe, it can be even more than that, like 50 bucks an ounce sometimes, especially at the restaurants. So I'm getting the exact cuts of meat that I want that are gonna give me the most amount of satisfaction in my meals. Why? It's kind of like what I talked about last week. Not having that satiety, that total sense of pleasure, that real big appreciation and having a heart-filled relationship and eating experience with my food. When you're eating one meal a day in a calorie deficit, you don't wanna f that up. A couple of weeks ago, I was eating ground beef and I had 2 pounds of ground beef, and I didn't make burgers out of it. And I just said, I'll just mix it all together. And it was like 1 pound of Kobe ground beef and another pound of ground beef mixed with organs. I mixed it all up and just threw it in a big silver bowl. It looked like dog food, seriously. And I was like, this is not very visually stimulating. And it kind of took the wind out of my sails because, again, when you are only eating one meal a day, like I am, because I'm purposefully practicing OMAD, 1 meal a day, and in a calorie deficit, you have one shot to get that meal right. And my steaks are pretty fucking amazing. So why would I risk that meal on something that's not gonna be amazing? So of all the steaks, of all the cuts, of all the ground beefs and all the this and that's, of all the options, my 2 favorites, the 2 standouts have been picanha, again, the top sirloin with the fat cap still on it, and the Chuck Roast. Why the Chuck Roast? Why a roast? Why would you eat a roast and not a steak? Anything can be a steak, first off. Tuna steak, salmon steak, shark steak, right? You've all heard that? Anything can be a steak. It doesn't need to be beef. Pork steak, chicken steak. A steak is just a cut, right? Let's make that very clear. For the Chuck Roast comes from the shoulders, and its marbling is very comparable to that of the ribeye. If you put a Chuck Roast and a ribeye next to each other, I can cut a ribeye, or rather a piece of a Chuck Roast, to where it literally looks like the same shape as the ribeye. And when they're next to each other, side by side, their marbling, their color and everything looks very, very, very similar. Their flavor profiles are also very similar. Most people think roast, they think stew, slow cook, crock pot, etc., etc. Yeah, it's great for that and all, but you can take that same roast, that same hack, that same cut of beef, and just sear that thing. And guess what? It's a freaking steak. Hey. And it's an $8.99 per pound steak also. As opposed to, you look at those ribeyes again, $15, $17, $25, $32 a pound. It's like, damn. People always ask me, I could never do that diet, Jake. It's too expensive. How do you eat all that meat? It's so expensive. Okay, so, $9.99 a pound, 10 bucks a pound, times 7. I mean, you can do the math, but it basically comes out to like, and I'll say it my way. So I'm eating roughly 20 ounces or 1.25 pounds of beef a day right now. So if I'm paying $9.99 a pound and I'm eating 1.25 pounds per day times 7 days, by my math, that comes out to, I think, $78.50 or $78.75, something like that. Just under $79, or roughly $11.25 a day. $11.25 a day. I've had cups of coffee in New York more than that. I've had cups of coffee in California for more than that. I've definitely had juices that cost more than that, or smoothies that cost more than that. And how many of those do you have a day? I'm eating for $11.25 a day. And you tell me you can't afford this diet? Come on. And that's in a deficit, and that's eating still somewhat premium meat. Wait until I go on the sale items and I'm buying the ground beef or the steaks for $5.99 a pound. Then what? Now we're talking about eating like $6 a day, $7 a day. It is so much more doable and economically viable and sustainable with your joy and how you feel than so many people think, or rather mistakenly assume. I can't afford it. I can't sustain it. I'm not going to feel well. No, that's exactly the paradigm that they want you to think, that you need these other things. You need to feel this way. You need to buy these groceries. You need. No, we need very, very, very little. The body is an amazing thing. And by feeding it the most optimal way, and by most optimal, I mean single source of sustenance. I love fruits. I like certain vegetables. I can appreciate the whole foods in full spectrum of the world. But when we're talking about most optimal, single source of sustenance. So from a single source of sustenance, this one steak, this one piece of meat, I'm able to get all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the nutrients, everything that I need to not just feel good, not just to survive, not just to make it, not just for status quo or homeostasis, but to freaking thrive. That's remarkable. There's no supplements, there's no pills. I don't need this vegetable, this fruit, this micronutrient from this one. I'm not saying they're not delicious. I'm not saying they don't have benefits. They do. They can. But there is only one way of the most optimal form of eating, and it's this, the single source. So, week 6 of the 100 days of the Lion Diet for me, that's the big takeaway was, man, I was able to dial in my food to just 2 things. So now when I go get groceries, it's literally, I'm either getting picanha or chuck roast. That's it. Well, Jake, how do you cook your meat? In my own homemade tallow. You can check the link in the description for that video where I actually show you guys how to make homemade beef tallow for free. How is it free? Well, most butchers throw the fat away that they're trimming from steaks. You can ask any butcher at any meat shop that you shop at. They might not give it to you, but maybe if you're like me and you smile and you ask nicely, they do give it to you for free. So you take your fat trimmings, you put them in a slow cook or a crock pot, you simmer it on slow. They're going to reduce, and it's going to simmer, and all this liquid gold starts forming. And that liquid gold is your tallow. You strain that out through a strainer, pour it out into a mason jar, leave it out overnight, and then voila, you have tallow in the morning, and you've also got crackling from the fat that's left over in the pot. Again, watch the video in the comments. That's how you make free homemade tallow, and that is what I cook in. So when I say I'm paying $11.25 a day for the food that I'm eating, it's just the food, because I didn't pay for the tallow, because guess what? That was freaking free.